for the class, so we're recording. I can minimize this thing. Is this letting you all in automatically? It is. Yay! So I wanted to talk about our next project. So I feel like we're kind of going kind of quick, but that's intentional. I want to the way I'm thinking about it is the first half of this semester, we're cranking out a whole bunch of little things, right? And then the last half of the semester, we're making a couple of big things, right? So really, this is our training, right? These are our reps, right? This is where we're, building our muscles for animation. So when we get in there and start animating, we kind of have all of our toolbox full of tools that we can use. I feel like I mixed like 6 metaphors right there. Hopefully it all still made sense, but it was a metaphor soup, which is another metaphor. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of talk about our next project a little bit. So we're going to do a walk cycle. How many of you have done a walk cycle in another class before? All right. So most of you should have done something in the principles class, the walk cycle with the 2-legged creature, right? So some of these concepts are going to feel familiar. Some of you maybe even done some more animations with the walk cycle and animation fundamentals. How many of you have taken character animation? Okay. So a few of you have been in character animation, or we did some more cycles in there. We did at least a run, right? And so you're probably like, Marlo, I've done enough walk cycles. I no longer need walk cycles in my. So that's actually completely untrue. I have done probably hundreds of walk cycles, run cycles, some form of locomotion cycle in my life. It is the animation you will do the most. And so if you don't like them, it's okay. They're kind of a chore at times. You almost learn a formula for how to do one and start to make it look good. But eventually it kind of becomes like so automatic that it's how I test a rig. If I get a rig and I'm like, ooh, I wonder how this works, I just start doing a walk cycle with it to see, right?
I was going to say, sometimes depending on the character, they can be really hard to make appealing.
Oh yeah.
So, practice is like.
Yeah, and it's the thing that we see so much, right? We see somebody walking so much that we recognize when it's wrong very easily. So, but one of the reasons I picked a walk cycle is because it's an animation that you all have probably done before, right? So I don't have to teach you too much from scratch here, and that allows us to focus on what the real challenging part for this is, which is we're going to create a full character rig, and we're going to animate a walk cycle with that character rig. So really this is like, think of the pendulum as basic rigging. This character is the intermediate rigging. Maybe even get up into the advanced rigging parts of this. So we're going to learn some more techniques on how to build control onto our character so we don't have to redraw every frame for a full character. Now there are some types of animations that you just have to redraw every frame. There are some elements within a rig in which you'll have to redraw every frame. But I'm going to show you sort of some techniques to build a sort of a full character version of what you have with that pendulum just now, something you didn't have to redraw every frame. Now, I think this is a good point to talk about some phrases you're going to hear. One of them is limited animation. How many of you have heard that phrase before? Right? So we can kind of look at this from the historical standpoint, right? Animation, Lady and the Tramp, something like that, right? That was a high-budget animation for Disney, high budget at the time, where they were drawing every frame of the animation, right? Or at least on tubes, right? They were drawing every change that happened on that character. And most animations, I'm sure, take somewhere between 2 to 5 years, right, to complete. So if every animation had to be done that way, we would get a very limited, a very small amount of finished animation we could watch every year. limited animation came from the fact that TV productions needed more, right? Like a season of He-Man may have been 22 episodes long, right? And each of them 30 minutes or 23 minutes, however many you get for commercials. You do the math on it, like that's like 12 hours of animation or something. That's probably closer to 11, right? Versus the hour and a half of Lady and the Tramp that took them 5 years, right? So we would only get an episode of He-Man a year if we were working that way. Limited animation was tricks that animators started to use that sort of reduced the quality of the animation just a little bit, but allowed us to be able to create more finished footage per second, or per day, right? I keep using He-Man as an example. He-Man was the, let's see if we can find some video footage of the old original He-Man. Anybody watch these? Yeah, all right, we will, Secret of Grayskull. These are,
What does it take
used
to build a...
skip it in 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. There we go, skip those ads. So Filmation was a company that sort of specialized in limited animation. And so by limited animation, TV series, like the storytelling flow was different, right? There would be times where, so like there's a good example, right? Like, there would be times when characters would just be talking for like 2 minutes, right? And they would be like, why am I redrawing the entire character over and over and over for 2 minutes when the only thing that's changing is their mouth, right? Maybe occasionally they make an arm gesture, right? Why do that over and over again? And so if you start to watch this, you'll start to see tricks that they're doing, right? Like right there, the only thing that was moving was his tail, but it was just one drawing of Battle Cat. Now some of the shots are redrawing the entire aim. So as he walks up and punches the screen here, watch this. That's like, this is a full keyframed animation. They're drawing every frame, right? But if you keep watching the series, you'll see that punch animation happen like 2 times an episode. Like they will reuse sections of it. Okay. Be sure to drink your whiskey, everybody. There we go. So you kind of watch this. Filmation was sort of a master of it. And even some of these you'll see are just single drawings, right? That they just kind of like zoomed in on, right? And I'm sure like you can look back at some of the tricks they used that were very interesting. Photocopying stuff and just zooming in on it and then retracing it. Yeah.
Scooby-Doo is another good example, because that show reuses a lot of animation, like the walk cycles or run cycles, or like characters talking, and they'll just intercut that throughout the entire segments of all the shows.
Oh yeah.
Or the segments that are new are just like this flashing, or maybe the hand moving up and down. You only see the body moving, so they don't have animated legs.
So you'll see, Scooby-Doo is a great. I always wondered why they did this when I was a kid, and then later I understood it. When Scooby or Shaggy or any of them are walking down a set of stairs, instead of having them taking steps down the stairs, they just lean the entire character like this, and they walk diagonally down the stairs, right? Like they're just trying to save footage. So, like I was noticing Tila speaking earlier here, right? So here's an example. We zoom in, we get this like shot of Tila and Orko. There. Like nothing is changing except for Tila's mouth for like 2 seconds, right? Like watch them like talk. Like it's one drawing, they're just animating the mouth, right? So we can let this kind of play. I'll skip forward here. I think this is the full episode. So all of these are tricks that you can do to get the animation. So these are ways that they did tricks to get more animation faster. Right? You could crank out more minutes of finished animation a day. Now, it resulted in these feeling kind of cheap, right? Like they were not, like this is not the same caliber as Lady and the Tramp, right? And I think that it's worth recognizing that that's a decision, right? That's not a that these animators were the bad animators, and so they had to take the He-Man job, right? I don't know. Maybe they weren't as good as the Disney animators. I don't know, but that's not the reason they made that. It wasn't that they couldn't make better. It's that it was a creative decision that if you wanted to make 11 hours of animation, you got to cut some corners. You got to find some ways of getting that done. To give you an idea, right now, I've seen the timelines for TV series that are being created right now. It's approximately 2 weeks to complete a full episode of a TV show. That's what a team gets, right? And like, that sounds crazy, right? Because I am extremely happy if you can get 10 seconds of animation in 2 weeks, right? But no, you need 23 minutes. And there's maybe a team of 10 or 15 people, right? So again, these are creative decisions. But I think that it's also important to recognize that if you're going to apply to Disney, like Tila's mouth moving is not going to get you that position, right? That is not a high quality piece of animation. It was a piece of animation that got the shot done, right? Maybe if you did the one where He-Man's punching, maybe that one's one that would end up in your show reel. So I think that that's important to recognize that because a lot of people come in to animation, and the reason is because they want to have their own show, right? You're like, I want to make my own animated series. And if that's what you want to do, then you have to make creative decisions on where you're going to cut corners. You're basically prioritizing story quality over animation quality, right? Or story depth over animation quality. And that's a sliding scale. You can scale that up and down. And I'm not making a judgment call on that either way. Those are different jobs. Like, those are different types of jobs that you would be applying for. Being able to show that you can do 2 minutes of animation in a week is a skill that certain companies want to see. Being able to show that you can have a complex, like clean, arcing, nice overlapping acting piece that evokes emotion, that's a different job you're applying for, right? So I feel like that was important to kind of talk about the difference, because when we get into rigging of a character, what we're doing is we're trying to make limited animation. Oh, I did want to show you one more of these. These are good. If you ever watch He-Man, have y'all seen this?
Yeah.
Prince Adam's laughing? That's the entire Every time Prince Adams or He-Man laughs, it's that. Every time in the entire series. And actually, I have the box set of like season 1 and a couple of the seasons. And I was listening to like the commentary behind it, and they were like, yeah, it was just a running like thing that we would do in the studio for the people who are writing the episodes to see how many times they could use that laugh in one episode. And like one episode got up to like 7 times or something. Now I'll be remiss if I don't kind of mention that this is not just this is a problem-solving technique that people have used even in really high-quality animation, right? So if you ever notice let me find the videos of these here. I'm sure this is.
You know it would be great right now if we still had State Farm.
They did this a lot too when they would be on a timeline. They would take the fundamentals of that character of a scene from before, and they would just redraw those motions on a different character. Right? They figured out the hard part. They figured out the way. They figured out all of that information. They just apply it to a completely different character. Exact animation. of these, there's way more than 7 that you can use. So I guess I just wanted to give you some background of why we're doing this. So the project would give you additional practice in animating a rigged character and creating a believable walk cycle using the contact down, passing, and up poses. But what we're doing is we're creating a limited animation rig. So we don't have to hand draw everything. Just like you all hand drew every frame of that jump animation, we're going to create another very similar type of animation that we could use a limited rig on to be able to get stuff done a little faster. So the summary of the project. In this project, you're going to create a rigged animation of your character walking forward in a looping cycle. What we're going to be doing, create a rig and an animation of a character walking in an infinite cycle, take into consideration squash and stretch, ease in and out, solid drawing, staging and solid drawing. This animation should be created with a full character rig made from your designed character. We'll work together throughout the semester, throughout the project. Cycle the animation at least 5 times so we can see how it loops. Export the animation. The final deliverable should be an MP4 video. I recognize that MOV videos are working fine as well, as long as it's the H.264 codec. That's kind of what Harmony is automatically kicking out. So, again, project to be graded using a rubric and 25-point scale based on the quality of the work and adherence to the instruction. The rubric for the project can be viewed below. Yes. So that's the question I knew was going to come up. Which character? You are allowed to use the character you've already designed, the character you use for exercise 2. You do not have to use that character. I'm not forcing you to stay in that character. Some of you may want to do a completely different character. You may want to reuse that character. You may want to do a variation. You maybe learned something while you were doing that frame-by-frame animation about the best way for that character to communicate, and you do minor redesigns on it. Completely up to you. Your character, like I'm not going to force you to use any of it, but you do have that one design. So that might be a reason to think about that. A lot of what we're going to be doing between now and next class period, though, is just sort of getting that design laid out in the illustrations that allow us to rig it. So, yeah, did that answer the question? Cool. So the rubric of how this is going to be graded, the rig, staging, posing, and solid drawing, timing, spacing, and weight, overlapping action, arcs, and polish, personality, and appeal. So those are the categories that they'll fall into. I feel like I was kind of really cramming stuff in to try to get them all into their own categories. But all of these are things that I think are going to be important. And I kind of grouped them in a way that makes sense to the motion as it applies to a 2D animated rig. I did sort of isolate rig to itself, because that is a big portion of this, is learning how to rig a character. And then the rest of it is sort of getting that motion out of it. But some of this, like solid drawing, staging, posing, all of that stuff, those are elements of how you would design the character as well. And personality and appeal may come from the way the character moves. So that will be also dictated by how you create the rig, right? So there's a lot of, this is all kind of intertwined. This is really one that I wish I could just have like 30 rubric criteria and then you would have a weird number for your grade. But I think that this will still work to kind of clump all these together. So, and it'll be due, this is wrong. So I have it set up that it's going to be due Monday, September 23rd. We're actually going to push that back a class period. So edit HTML, we're going to set this to Wednesday, September 25th. Second, update. So that'll give us a couple class periods, right? That's going to give us this class period to kind of work on getting the character design done. And then next class period, we're going to start piecing that together as a rig. And I'm going to go more in depth into the node editor, the node view, and how to create a rig that you can use. We're also going to talk about deformers, which is a way that you can make a single drawing work. Right? So for those to work, though, you have to do your character in vector. So just kind of letting you know that in case you're wanting to use the bitmap layers. You can for your concept and stuff like that, but once you start to rig it, it needs to be in vector. So let's look at what this is not a project that I think is a great candidate for me working on it while you watch. Right? This is not a super exciting project for that. Apparently I didn't have the mouth and stuff finished on this. So this is an early version of the character, apparently before I drew a nose of him. But imagine he has a nose. I was looking for an example. The biggest reason I wanted to show you this is because of how this character is broken up. Okay? If you think there's a chance that you're going to need to reuse a certain element of the character in some way, then that needs to be on its own layer. So if we look at what our character is right now, I have all these different layers, right? That was my original sketch of him that's just sort of on top so I could see it. But I have my mouth layer. Right? I have my right eyeball, and then the right eye, so the eye itself. And then because I'll need the eyeball to be able to look around, I have that as its own separate layer. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, if I need to move that eyeball, how can I do that? Oh, that eyeball, all right. I can move that around inside of the eye, right? Of course, I can take it all the way outside of the eye. We'll talk about that limitation later, right? So that's two different pieces of that. I did another one for the left eyeball and the left eye. I have the brows separated, so right brow, and that way I can sort of move them together if I wanted to seem curious, if I wanted to make them sad, I can sort of push them up. So there's a lot of different things. So I have both eyebrows separated. Now that doesn't mean you have to have both eyebrows separated. The design of your character will change some of this stuff, right? And if you have a character that has a big bushy unibrow, right, then maybe what you're going to do is rig that as all one piece that you can warp or bend, right? My character had two very distinctively shaped eyebrows, so I just kept them separate, right? Or maybe you want your character to have a stronger shaped forehead, and so that would be another reason to keep those together. There are reasons that you would keep the eyeballs as one layer instead of two as well. But right now, just like whenever in doubt, go ahead and make it a separate layer. You could always group those together, move those together into one layer later, or we could just create a group over top of that, and that could be what we animate, right? Did I make the ear? Apparently the ear is part of my, apparently that ear is on there, so that's all right. So my character, this is something that I did intentionally. I made the entire right arm one piece. Now, I did that differently for the legs. If you look at the legs, I did the leg in three pieces. I have the low leg, the foot, and the up leg. Right? So that's more like how we designed the pendulum. For the arm, I made it one piece because it was so short that I didn't really want to have to bend it in three places. I felt like that would get unclear about the silhouette. The way this character's arm is going to work, or did work, is that the arm bent instead of, like it curved. It would make like a C shape instead of bending in like an L shape, right? And I did that with a deformer. So we'll talk about that later. Again, it's up to you on how you want to do that, right? You'll see that I take all of this away. At the heart of this, my character is mainly this torso piece, right? And I kept that all as one piece because of the way the character was designed, but maybe your character has a very separate head, so that means the head would be separate from the body. I did it this way because I wanted my character to be able to deform all as one piece, right? This is not how we'll rig it, but you'll see that if I go to this tool right here, this envelope tool, choose my torso, just choose everything in here, right? I can warp this entire character as a single piece now, right? To get a pose if I wanted to, right? And so that's really what I'm going to do later is I'm going to create a deformer that will allow me to deform the entire character's mass. Now, like I said, this is not a project that is fun to watch someone else work on. So my plan for this, I've actually already rigged this character before, and I'll kind of show you what he looks like when he's moving. I have a couple of pieces that I've done with him. So one of them is organize the state modified. This one. So I'll show you a couple of versions of this. So this was a lip sync piece that I did with a character, and so you'll get an idea of how that works, right? As I can turn on the audio if you want to hear it. Stop, wrong button, that one. So.
I do not know how I would stop. Without a gun, I do not know how I would stop that raccoon from trying to impregnate my Winnie the Pooh lawn ornament.
So, that is this is project, like one of the next few projects we're going to do, which is a lip sync, right? We may build on this rig, although for the lip sync piece, you are also welcome to create your own complete custom rig if you wanted to with it. So that was one animation I did with the rig. Another one is a run cycle. I'll open that one up as well. I think it was this one. And this one I also added some additional effects on it too, just to give you an idea of some of the tricks that we got in this. So I guess we can see this a little bit better if we watch this as the videos where I rendered it out. This one? Nope, probably the other one. This one works though.
Without a gun, I do not know how I would stop that raccoon from trying to impregnate my Winnie the Pooh lawn ornament.
Here's the one I'm going to show.
That's Superstore.
Yeah, I love that show. It's so funny. Here we go. So there's a couple of interesting elements to this one. One is sort of that I kind of got these streak things happening to the side. It's actually a rain effect that's turned on its side to give me sort of some speed lines. But the other thing I want you to notice, and this is the reason I'm bringing this up, is this shadow down here, right? That's not hand drawn. Like that is actually procedurally done by duplicating the character and doing some effects and flipping it upside down. So there's a lot of little tricks we can do to this once we get this character rigged. This entire shot took about 4 hours, and that was starting with nothing. Like that's including creating the rig. So this was about a day's worth of work. So that's one of the reasons we do this, is because this would take a much longer time if you were having to redraw every frame. The other thing is this is very editable. If somebody came to me and said, you know what, his head's bobbling a little too much, I could go back in there and sort of change some of that. Right? Okay, so this is making sense, kind of what we're going for. So I am going to also be working on this project along with you whenever you're not needing help. Like I can sort of bounce around and help you as you need it. But when you're not, I'm going to try to create a new character every semester in this, and I don't want to just keep reusing that character we just had. So I've done a couple of sketches here, and I want to get your vote on which one I should do. So I'm going to be tinkering on one or the other, and you get to decide. It's either this sort of stubbly strawberry guy, right? Quick little sketch of him, or this lady kid, which she's very, very quick. What do you think? Who's voting strawberry? 3, 4, 5 for strawberry. Who's 6 for strawberry? Who's voting carrot?
Strawberry is terrifying, right?
I think the strawberry's a little creepy too. But that was kind of the thing. Like my wife loves strawberry shortcake, and she's adorable. So I was like, yeah, well, let's get a less adorable one. I like the idea of him being kind of lanky though. So, huh? The feces, yeah. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Well, I think she kind of won the vote. That's all right. Look, he's not going anywhere. Huh? Yeah. Well, maybe she will have to defeat Strawberry Man later. I don't know. So this one will be an interesting one. A couple of things I did in here intentionally just to give it some extra challenges. And this is a very rough, like the line work is going to be completely different on this. But one is that hair is going to have to deform, right? Like as she moves, that's going to have some jiggle or warp to it. That's cool. Her entire torso, she also needs some eyebrows, doesn't she? So she needs some eyebrows. Her entire torso, like from the top of her head all the way down to like sort of the hip region, is all one piece, right? So that's I'm going to have that deform as one unit. The legs, I will probably go ahead and break those up into 3 pieces for each leg. So I have upper leg, lower leg, and a foot. And that's just so I can get some very distinct bent shapes on the leg. Like I want the option of having a sharp knee angle, right? And that's mainly just for contrast because so I'm not for sure yet what I'm going to do on her arms. I kind of like the idea of the rubber hose bent arm, but I also like the idea of her being able to have a very distinctive arm. So she may have just 2 different types of arms that I'll use them both. All right. So this is what I'm just going to be tinkering on in my spare time as we go. The cool thing about this is I only have to draw all of these elements once, right? So that means I can take my time, I can make them perfect, I can add shadows, I can add textural detail. All of that stuff is stuff that I can spend time on to make this look more refined than maybe I was able to get on my illustrations for the jump animation, right? Does that make any sense? So, next class period, I would like to start rigging these characters. And I would like you to have something that's ready to start rigging too. So really what we're going to do in between now and the beginning of next class period is getting your character illustrated in the way that I had that guy just a minute ago, right? Broken up into all of those pieces in different layers, right? And then if we bring that in next class period, we will start some rigging techniques. You can kind of follow along. If you mess up, we can step back a phrase or step back a phase and rework that section. So, in most of the times I've rigged a character, I've had to rig it more than once. Right? You'll get halfway through it, realize, that wasn't how I should have done that. Go back to a previous save and start reworking it.
So we design our character, do you want it like 3/4 kind of view?
Yeah, I think, so our character is going to be doing a walk cycle to the side, but a perfect profile view is kind of boring, right? Like if you can only see the character perfectly from the side. So what I would do is I would turn them just a little bit to camera. So she's facing camera probably a little more than I would like. But yeah, so she's got a little bit of a. Let me see if I have my robot somewhere. There it is. I'm gonna mute this because I'm tired of this song. I have a robot character in here. There he is. So he's a little bit too much to the side, but trying to move it like that if you want to use it. Like this. Or it could also be, we have a character right before this that kind of runs in right there. So this is a little bit more three-quarters. So what I would say to do is it's to the side, but turn your character toward camera just a little bit to where you still have some depth, right? You can still see a little bit of their chest, not just their side of their shoulder. Does that make sense?
Okay, so if we want to do the arm, like, let's go back to the same one, do the hand, can we do what we did with the flashing light and the switch between
So that was a good question. So it was like you need a different hand, right? Like you have a separate drawing for the hand, right? And you need the hand to do a different pose rather than do literally 15 different layers for each finger and then one for the palm of your hand. Like just draw a different hand pose, right? Just switch from pose A to pose B on your hand. And so we can have frame by frame animation just like we had on the flashing light on the little pendulum. Right now, I would say do everything neutral for your character, right? Like if your character is a tired old man, then don't have him standing upright in the T pose. Get him as close to like what his neutral pose would be, right? And that way you don't have to go through a lot of extra work to get him into that tired old man pose. Does that make sense? And that kind of goes for the hands too. Don't draw the hands like this. Like draw them in sort of a casually like relaxed pose for whoever that character is. If your character is angry, then maybe their casual relaxed pose is already in a fist, right? But just sort of what you think that their hand pose is going to look like. And we can make subtle adjustments over time as we do that. So, does that make sense? And actually, this is very similar to what we're going to be doing. I wish I'd have favored him a little bit more to the camera. But this is some variation of. You kind of see, although this was done in Toon Boom, this is kind of the practice. You can see stuff like the upper body is broken up into pieces, and this mass in the middle is a separate piece. Each of the arms are broken up into pieces. Each of the legs are. But if you look. A little bit of difference. Look at the character's feet. So we're going to do a mix of that. We're going to find places where we can deform. We're going to find places where we can break it up into pieces to create a hierarchy like in the pendulum, right? So that's kind of your creative decision of which ones you think should deform in which ways as you're creating them. But again, when in doubt, break them up into separate layers because it's easier to re-merge those layers than it is to split it up again later. So, all right, any questions on the project? Yes.
You probably already answered this, and I probably should have said, but this character rig that we're making, are we using the same character rig for the rest of the project or just for the walk animation?
You have the option, the character design we did for exercise 2, you have the option to use that for all of these, for the lip sync piece, for this walk cycle, but you don't have to. So if you want to use that character you used in the first one for the walk cycle, but you don't want to use it for the lip sync, we can create a new one for the lip sync. So you can choose to make 3 new characters, or if you want to keep reusing the one, you can.
I didn't mean the character design, I meant the rigging.
Oh, the rig itself.
Like, should I prepare this rig to also be able to lip sync and do other things, or should I just prepare it to be able to walk?
Well, we can keep adapting the rig as we go. So right now, don't worry about like drawing extra mouth shapes or anything like that, but I would go ahead and separate the mouth off into a new layer, because really that's all it needs to be. Is the mouth and the eyes, and probably the eyebrows, all need to be on a separate layer than the character's head. Right? So if you decide you want to use it then we can just make some alterations to this rig to do the lip sync. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. But again, like if you get through with this one and you're like, I'm tired of this character, I'm doing a new character for the lip sync project, that's fine too. Katie, did you have a question there? All right. Well, I'm going to do something I usually haven't been doing this semester, which is give you some in-class work time. Right? Like I feel like I keep you in the middle of a lecture throughout every waking minute of this class. So the rest of the class today is yours to use how you want. Hopefully, some of you are spending some time getting your character ready for this. I'll go around and answer questions, but as that sort of wraps up, I'm going to start making this prettier, or making this cleaner, and getting my pieces ready for the rig too. So, all right, rest of the class is yours. I'll go ahead and stop the video and upload this to YouTube.